name's Mike Balboni, and I welcome you to the first segment of Emergency Matters, a show that's going to be looking at various aspects of public safety and emergency management for the town of North Hempstead. Now, some viewers in the audience might recognize me as the former Assemblyman, Senator, and Homeland Security Advisor for the state of New York. I now have the opportunity to work directly with the town of North Hempstead, and specifically Supervisor John Kaiman, on the issues that affect people's safety and their lives. We obviously have had a recent event that has really kind of reminded us how nature can take its own path and how it is so important for us to prepare and to respond appropriately. And that, of course, is Hurricane Irene. When Hurricane Irene hit Long Island, it was the largest widespread weather event that we'd had in over 25 years. And it obviously posed great challenges to municipalities across the island, but particularly here in the town of North Hempstead. So to discuss Hurricane Irene, it's the preventative measures, the preparations that were put in place, what happened during the storm, and of course the cleanup, is Supervisor John Kaiman and Commissioner Andy DeMartin. Andy is a fixture in the fire service in North Hempstead and has actually been involved in emergencies for a very, very long time, and now oversees the Department of Emergency Management and Public Safety. Supervisor, you've been in office for 8 years. How important is emergency preparations and the utilization of the town services to coordinate with other government entities to provide the best protection and prevention for your residents?
Well, preparation counts, and what we've learned over the years is that, one, we need to have qualified, skilled people who have experience, who are able to appreciate the nature of a storm event or some type of crisis that's approaching us. We're fortunate in the town of North Hempstead to have folks like yourself, by the way, who's an asset to us and have really helped us. We have our Commissioner of Public Safety, who oversees emergency management, Andy DeMartin, and his background in the fire service really came forth during this crisis. And also Tom McDonough, another fire chief. He's the ex-fire chief of Port Washington Fire Department, and he's our emergency management director. This team that we put in place to oversee this coming event really made a difference. I think we were able to see the storm as it approached, take the appropriate measures, partner with our villages, county, state partners throughout the region. We were able to prepare in a way that I think helped us during the course of the storm. And then after the storm, we were able to do the assessment and the cleanup in a way that made sense, and still makes sense because we're actually in that process as we speak. And I think in the long run, it's a learning experience, and this will be now used as a basis for the next crisis that comes. And it's always a growing opportunity whenever we have a crisis. But the more important thing is to be prepared to look to our resources, our human resources, our talent that we have, and make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep our residents safe, and to also make sure that we understand the nature of the event that's coming so that we can assess it and get the resources that we need to cover the cost of that. And that's a very important part of what we do.
Commissioner, many of the viewers might not be familiar with the scope and breadth of your department that you oversee. So why don't you just describe the services and the capabilities?
Well, the Department of Public Safety for the town of North Hempstead is comprised of 5 divisions: the Animal Shelter, Code Enforcement, Parking Enforcement, the Office of Emergency Management, and Town Security. Since I've been there in January, I've been revamping a lot of the areas and transferring some people that would be specific to emergency management and training them, giving them additional training to help us compensate for these events. And what's been fantastic is the staff that was there even before I was have just been fully cooperative and devoted. It's amazing. You know, I come from the fire service where there's amazing devotion to what we do. And extreme devotion to these people who have, John has actually hired in place before I got there, that they were willing to leave their families, come in town hall with us, spend 48 hours, some of them 72 hours, to just dedicate themselves to public service and really helping the public. And it was almost surprising how dedicated they were. And, you know, just like the volunteer fire departments that I've come from, same type of attitude. And
so, Supervisor, let's talk about the storm itself. So, as the storm approached, what types of communication capabilities that you utilized to make sure that the residents of the town knew what was going on and had up-to-date information?
All right, well, there's a few different things that we did. First, we called all our managers together and communicated with each other. Right, that's I think the primary goal when a storm event is coming is organization and preparedness. So we got our public safety commissioner, our emergency management director, and all our commissioners who all have a role. You know, the building commissioner has to have inspectors go out and assess damage immediately after the storm comes. We needed cash for buying generators and food and stuff like that, so our controller was on site. Our public works department, our highway department crews were out there and preparing for some of the storm and some of the events that were going to take place in regard to flooding and trees. So the first thing we did is communicate with each other. We brought each other in. The next thing we did is we realized that we were going to have an outlet for people to contact us. And we are fortunate in the town of North Hempstead to have a 311 call center. One of the things I did when I first took office is establish the North Hempstead 311 call center. We're the first suburban community in the country, I believe, to set up a system such as this. They are in a number of cities, but to do it in a suburban community had different challenges. What we decided was to staff the 311 call center 24 hours, 7 days a week. In other words, go straight through. So we brought in our call takers, started arranging to have them come in, I should say, appreciating that once the storm hit, people weren't going to be able to drive because the winds 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour were going to make it dangerous. So we literally were going to have our call takers sleep over because the storm was supposed to come in 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So we arranged to have people coming in at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning and just stay straight through. That turned out to be a great boon. We ended up having over 16,000 calls come in over a 5-day period into our 311 call system, as opposed to the 3,000 or 4,000 that might have come in during that same period. So it really was an extraordinary asset.
You know, I actually have a story about that. I was, you had asked me to go and staff the town at the county Office of Emergency Management Command Center. And I was sitting there and I got a, what they call a job action. There's a call, the complaint, tree down, power out, or tree actually hanging precariously towards the home. And I believe it was in Port Washington. And so I called the 311 center and I said, you know, do you have this? Not only had they had it, they'd already dispatched. I think it was Tom who went and personally went to the home and talked to the homeowner before it actually worked through the county system. So there's that rapid response capability that 311 provides.
I can't speak enough on Tom McDonough's dedication to this event. You know, talking about making your job easy. I mean, anything you give Tom McDonough, and that's because of relationships he's developed over the years and people he knows. He just is the go-to guy. He can get it done. But not only that, speaking about the 311 call center, I mean, we had people that never answered the phone before. We were training because, you know, you can only do that for a limited amount of time. And then you get complete burnout. You know, you can answer the phone for 12 hours and then you have to take a break. So we had people that had not answered the phone before. We had them in a rapid training program in a room, giving them the right answers, and they, you know, stepped up and assisted.
We had secretaries, clerks coming in.
Absolutely.
There's people on my staff came in. We had commissioners, deputy commissioners. I think the town clerk sat down for an hour to take calls while somebody else was on their way in. So it really was this group effort, and it was something to go into a call center with a storm raging around us, and you know, it being 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're in town hall, and it's all dark the rest of the building, and here we are with these people, and we're bringing in pizza. The pizza place down the street actually stayed open right through the storm, or most of it. So they were bringing us pizza, and it was really amazing to have this ability to communicate with people, even if we couldn't always give them the answer that they needed. You know, some people needed some information that we couldn't necessarily give them or even help them right away. A lot of times, by the way, we would connect them to 311. The call center was for non-emergency calls, but people call us, and we're the only game in town. We were able to switch them over right away.
Yeah, we have a 911 transfer hotline, so we can transfer them right over.
But just that extraordinary opportunity to have people connect.
No question.
The most important thing we were able to do, though, was to stay in touch with County Emergency Management through Andy and Tom McDonough, and then feed the information to the residents as they called. That became critical when we got the word that certain people were going to have to evacuate. I mean, there was a discussion about evacuation throughout this whole event, but a lot of it was voluntary. The South Shore had some mandatory evacuations, but at some point it became necessary to evacuate some of the folks in our town and other areas of the county, on the northern part of the county, and so we had to notify people. And you know, we went on TV and through a press conference with the county executive and announced an evacuation, and all of a sudden the phones just start lighting up because people don't know, am I in this area? Am I not in this area? Is my friend in this area? How do I know if it's me? And we were able to basically pinpoint someone's house and say, give us your address, and no, you don't have to evacuate. You can, but you're not in the mandatory evacuation site. And giving people that comfort level, one, knowing whether or not they should evacuate, or knowing whether or not they don't have to evacuate. People might live on a hill or in place, heights of some sort. It's probably better for them to stay home.
Right.
And we wanted to encourage people to do what was best for them if they wanted to leave, but we didn't want leaving people, as you yourself advised us during the storm, to make sure people understood. We don't want people leaving during the storm.
Right.
And so there comes a point when people had to stay put. You can't be driving around to hospitals or supermarkets or other things, and I know that you made a point at one of our meetings to tell all our staff that there's certain phases of the storm that we need to be aware of, and we need to be able to communicate effectively to people, and our 311 call center was able to do that.
Now, 311 requires that the resident picks up the phone and makes the call. So you're basically receiving information. Do you have a system where you can actually reach out to the residents and to the town officials? What's that system?
That's a Swift Reach system.
Swift Reach?
Swift Reach. A lot of schools now have this system, which is, so it's similar to the school systems where on a snow day you get a call at 6:30 in the morning telling you not to come to school. It's a great system. Well, municipalities all over America have this as well. And we have it, and that enables us to basically do a reverse 311 call, we call it. Some people call it a reverse 911 call. Whatever it is, it's an ability for the municipality, the town, to reach out to all our residents or segments of our community, depending on where we need it to reach, and give them a message. It's a voice message. And so I was able to send several messages out telling people about the evacuation, or about outages, or about flooding, or about the storm as it approached, whatever was necessary, just to stay in touch with people. People need a sense, I think, that their government is there. When you're in your house, especially when the lights go out and the storm's coming, to know that your government is still working is a source of comfort. And I think that's important. And to see the firemen out there and the emergency personnel, the officials, the Red Cross, by the way, another just incredible agency that opened up shelters. And it really is important, I think, for our residents to see that there are folks, even in the worst of times, out there doing what's necessary to keep them safe.
One of the critical things that we did that I don't think has been done in the past is myself and John went around and we visited the firehouses locally. And the guys knew that their sense of their government was backing them up. So we not only backed up the residents, but the first responders felt a sense of, hey, if we need something from the town, and we gave them special contact numbers to contact us if they needed anything. And at one point, we did supply cots, food, certain things to the fire service that they needed because we had the trailers available, and we prepared for that.
I recall Saturday morning, you and I stopping at the Port Washington Fire Department and talking with them, principally because it was anticipated that they would have to do some evacuations.
Right.
And I recall how happy they were to see us, frankly, that they were looking at you towards resources, and we're thrilled that you saw fit to send Andy there to talk to them about what their needs were.
And actually, during the storm, we went back, visited the same, both the police department and the fire department in Port Washington across the street from each other. And John gave him a sense of, the town is here for you, we're backing you up, and,
And it's nice to know that they were there for us. I mean, just to see the firemen, the police, and we were able to speak to the Port Washington Police and the Nassau County Police. It's comforting to those of us who are out there, too, to know that we have the firemen with their extraordinary training and the police with their skill and experience. This community, this area, this region, the Long Island, we really do have some of the most extraordinary people who are not just volunteers. We call people volunteers, but these are people that have training that any professional would hope to get throughout a career, and it really makes a difference.
Actually, one of the things that I get a chance to do is I serve on a think tank in Washington, D.C. that actually looks at emergencies throughout the nation. And we work with the White House and we provide papers. And what always amazes me is that when you take a look at a town like North Hempstead with over 30 different villages, the amount of expertise, personnel, and equipment that you can bring to bear in any type of emergency is unique in the country. No one has that kind of capability. But coordinating 30 different villages, 30 different independent governments.
Absolutely.
And always a challenge. But what do you find are the keys to doing that?
It gets back to where we started. It's about communication. So I know that I reached out to every mayor in our town and a lot of the other leaders, including the county executive and some other folks. We were able to maintain a dialogue with them. We have an Office of Intermunicipal Coordination, which purpose is to maintain a dialogue with other municipal entities. And in our town, like you said, we actually have 31 villages. We also have 60 special districts, 11 school districts. We have 100 governmental entities or quasi-governmental entities within our town, all of which have resources, personnel, responsibilities, and our job is to make sure that they know what we have and we know what they have and we all know what each other are doing. And again, giving our residents the comfort level to know that their government and leaders are working for them. I think
we also established special relationships with all of them. They know us by face. You know, they know myself. They know Tom McDonough. We're there not only for them before the storms, but on a day-to-day basis where we've established those relationships.
That's a crucial point.
Without a doubt.
There's an old Irish saying,
no question,
that the time for thatching is not during the storm, and that was always the guidance that I try to provide the government when I was in the state, that you've got to develop these relationships ahead of time. You've got to invest your own personal resources of your government to make sure that everybody knows that when the storm hits, when the emergency hits, they know who to call, they know what they'll be able to do, and that they know they'll be there.
No question. And not only that, we're going to carry them through, helping them through filing for their FEMA reimbursements. We don't stop after the storm. You know, our Office of Emergency Management will take care of the villages, districts, special districts, just to make sure that they can go completely through this without being scathed. You know.
All right, let's talk about the storm itself. Now, you had, when you listed the departments that you oversee, one of them you listed was the pet shelter.
Animal shelter.
Animal shelter. And so I know that in the 17 years I was in the state legislature, passed hundreds of laws. The one law that I got the most feedback on is when I required the state of New York, when they did the sheltering, to have a pet-friendly shelter.
Absolutely.
I get so many people, thank you very much. And of course, there's the image from Katrina of the man standing on his porch holding his dog, that he was not going to leave his home and leave that animal perish there. So it makes the animal shelters so incredibly important. So how did the operation work during the storm?
Well, what was fantastic, and I always tell John this, you know, the supervisor, the people that are at the shelter are the hardest working people in the town of North Hempstead, no question. From the second they get in there to the second they leave, they're working. And their devotion to animals is bar none.
A true labor of love.
Absolutely, without question. You know, I went and addressed the staff. The director was on vacation. She came back in from her vacation. We formed a small pet plan, which it was already in place. You know, it was strictly going over it, recapping it, what we were going to do. We have these portable cages that we set up, over 100 of them, to receive. We were the first municipal shelter open in Nassau County, and we started taking pets in immediately. And the supervisor and myself, we went down for an inspection to see what was going on. We expected, because of the evacuation in the Manhattan, Manhattan Isle area, that some of those pets would definitely need to be sheltered because we couldn't take them to the regular person shelter. We had to, you know, separate the people from their animals. So, you know, it was interesting to see that how quick and how available those people were to set up. And they knew the plan. You know, there was not any education that had to go through that process. They really know their business.
Now, from sheltering animals to sheltering people, right. I know, Supervisor, you went and personally visited the shelter several times. Well, what were some of your insights and perspectives?
You know, it was interesting to see that people, first of all, that people listen and go to a shelter to begin with. You know, there's always a safety and comfort level in your own home. To get people to actually leave is incredible. We went up into Schreiber High School, and the schools really were extraordinary assets. There was, I think, 6 shelters in our town in high school gymnasiums. And you know, we went up to Port Washington. At one point, there was over 250 people there, and the 3 of us, actually, I know we were all there. And just to have that opportunity to see the folks with their kids, just hanging out, reading a book. You know, I was struck at 10 o'clock, they announced that the lights are going out, and they said, you know, it's stressful, it's good, people can get an early night's sleep. When they wake up, hopefully the storm will be on its way out. But at 10 o'clock, the Red Cross volunteers came around with bags of stuffed animals, and they gave them to all the kids. And that was just a really nice touch to just give people that one little piece of comfort, because the kids were running around, and there clearly was a stress factor there. And the town brought generators, and we brought fans, and we were trying to do our share to make sure that they had what they needed. Interestingly enough, I went over to the shelter in Great Neck, at Great Neck North, and we saw people from neighborhoods that were fairly well-off neighborhoods, and people from Kings Point, people from other areas of Great Neck. And I'd asked, it's interesting to see you. It's great to see that you came here because part of your area was going to be flooding. And they said, listen, they have trees, 60, 70, 80 foot high. It's a lot safer in a gymnasium than it is in a house filled with windows and all sorts of other things. And the fact that people would be willing to come to shelter. And when I got to Great Neck, there was a bunch of people, 20 people sitting in chairs, just hanging out, talking to each other. And it was a nice communal type environment. And it's just great to see. There was something that, warm about being able to see people come together in a crisis from different walks of life and different areas of the town and get through it.
And a nice part of when we visited that shelter, they did make a request to the town for some additional food, which we were able to provide immediately. You know, some of our staff that was waiting on call stopped at one of our areas that we were setting up for a family shelter and brought food and provisions over to them. So it was nice to be able to help them as well.
Yeah. Okay, now let's go post-storm. And one of the things that we chatted about was that so oftentimes people don't appreciate the fact that when the storm or the emergency ends, it's not really over, particularly if there's going to be widespread damage. And if you look at the statistics and the studies, it actually shows that many of the injuries in some events occur after the event has passed because of downed power lines, of problems with chainsaws, kind of self-help that goes awry. So post-event, what were your impressions? I know that you did an extensive tour from the bay to see about the boats. I know, Andy, you've got a story about a boat.
Yes.
And also, individual homeowners and talking about the power outages and, how did you think LIPA's response was? And why don't you give us some of your insights?
I think the big story about the storm is the aftermath of the storm. I mean, the big story for Long Island is going to be the power outages and LIPA's response. And I have the opportunity to speak to Ken Hervey. He's in charge of LIPA. He has the responsibility on his shoulders. And it's a huge undertaking. And I don't know if people really appreciate it. And I know when power is out, and in my town, in the town of North Hempstead, we had 53,000 properties without power. That's a lot of people without power. Long Island-wide, I think, was 500,000 people, half of all the customers of LIPA. At the same time that this is happening, there's outages below us, New Jersey, and north of us, in upstate New York, and the whole East Coast. And so there's resources that people can come and just get more and more people, although they tried, and they're still doing that. So the story is the outages and how we're dealing with it, and people were incredibly frustrated to not have power. And that's, people can go a day, they can go a second day, but you get to the third or fourth day. And so I think the story here that people are going to really remember is the extent of the power outages. I think they're going to come to appreciate LIPA's role a little bit more as they see the fuller story. Sure. And speaking to Mike Hervey, he was telling me, and I wrote down some of the numbers, that there they are, thank you, that they had 1,800 linemen out there working on the wires. They have 700 more coming today, and of course when people see this, this will be after the fact, but ultimately they're going to have 2,500 people working on lines. It's a lot of people. Town of North Hempstead, realizing that their limitation on personnel was such that they couldn't get to some of the wires because of the downed trees, we offered to have our 100 or so tree crew folks go out there and shadow their trucks and help remove some of the trees after they turned off the wire, of course. But the point was we work together and we're trying to get our power on as quickly as possible, helping them do what they have to do, and then we can help do what we need to do. And it's our job to clear the trees ultimately anyway, and we are doing that. But I think the real story is the power outages. And other than that, though, Andy said it's these guys keep on going, and you yourself as well. The storm ended. Andy, DeMartin, Tom McDowell, they don't go home and go to bed. They go out there and now start dealing with the damage. The firemen, the police, the emergency responders, the Red Cross. It's still out there. The danger is out there. The wires are out there. The flooding is out there. The debris is out there. The people who are panicked are out there. Right. And yet the community handled it. As far as our community goes, I think people really came together. There's a great deal of frustration because of the power outages, but that I think is the story.
Interesting about one of the distinctions of being the public safety commissioner is I'm also the harbor master. Right. So the Bay Constables, who, by the way, we've set up a webcam on our website that you can see the harbor 24/7, which we watched from Town Hall to watch how the tides were affected. We went down. Luckily, the storm hit at like a medium tide, and then the high tide proceeded afterwards, and the flooding came, directly after the storm, even after the storm had cleared. But we kept one of our safe boats in the water. I had asked for a damage assessment, and one of the Bay Constables recited to me that a boat did break free from a mooring and navigated its way through the other boats and connected into a slip. all by itself, and they went
Marina.
over and tied a rope onto it.
So let's just paint the picture for the folks who
Right.
may not be familiar with the way the bay works. So you have all these boats that are on moorings that basically are in the water.
Parking spot in the water.
A
right.
parking spot in the water, and then
They're
you have
attached by a
boats.
rope and a weight at the bottom of the
But then you have boats
bay.
that are in slips that are at docks.
Right, marinas,
And
right.
marinas. And so the greatest concern during a storm is that
Boat
a
freight
big
for-
surge will take these boats, will break them free of their moorings, and then they'll basically become missiles
Right.
that will go and take out other boats or take out docks. In this case, one broke away and actually navigated all the other boats and got right into a slip.
Slide and slip. We only had to tie a rope around it. That was it.
Almost like saying, I'm out of here,
Right,
I don't
right,
want to be here, let me go
right.
home.
And amazingly enough, we only had damage to 3 boats in the entire, between Hempstead Harbor and Manhasset Bay, only 3 boats were damaged. We took some major preparation. A lot of the big vendors that were that had their large cargo ships and tugboats asked for safe shelter. We provided it in the harbor, deep inside. We tied them onto some of the seawalls. So there was amazing preparation, amazing amount of lead time. Had this been quick, like the microburst that hit or something like that, we wouldn't have had those advantages. We would have had more significant damage on the water,
Right.
especially.
You know, that's a very important point. We actually, in many respects, and of course, you know, if you're still watching this and you don't have power, you may disagree with my characterization of this, but we kind of missed the bullet. We dodged the bullet in the sense that, first of all, it was a slow-moving event. Most emergencies happen, as you said, like with the microburst last year, happened so fast, you're really in a response. You know, protect yourselves during the event and then get out and respond.
Right.
Here, we knew it was coming, so we were able to do extensive evacuations. Like the city of New York, the first time in its history, evacuated hospitals and nursing homes. They'd never done that before.
Shut down the
And
MTA.
they shut down the MTA. You know, obviously in the South Shore of Long Island, as you pointed
Hours
out.
before,
You know,
hours before.
hours and almost in some days
Some
days
days
before. But as it comes out, though, you know, we didn't have the kind of event, thank God, that we were looking at, potentially a Category 2 or Category 3 storm, God
Right.
forbid. But nonetheless, people still, in anticipation of it, they listened, they heeded to what was going on. What do you attribute that to, Supervisor?
I think it's a community that gets it. I mean, you know, people understand that there was a threat out there. You know, Andy and I were driving at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. The winds were whipping up. This is the night as the storm approached. And the rain really started coming down, and we looked around and we noticed there are no cars on the road. And you know, you think people always have a sense that they can go out and do something and it's going to be okay. Here, people stayed home. They got the sense, they were aware, and that's because the emergency management folks, the police, the fire departments, everybody got the message out. The TV stations, et cetera, everyone got the message out that, you know, this was serious and you have to take it seriously, and people did take it seriously. So our community really did come together. People helped each other. You know, we talked about evacuation of shelters. Most people don't go to a shelter; they go to a friend's house.
Right.
And so there were people taking other people in to their homes during the
Friends and
storm.
family.
Friends and family sheltering. And it's amazing. I mean, so people really helped other people, and I think that's part of the story.
You know,
as
Mike,
well.
just going back to the aftermath, one other mention that we have to put out there makes my job tremendously easy is Tommy Tiernan. I mean, there's never a second. You know,
The
he's
Commissioner
been Commissioner
of Public Works.
No,
he's not a commissioner.
He's the highway
He's the
superintendent.
Sorry, highway
superintendent.
superintendent.
He literally, you know, there's never a doubt that he's not able to handle the situation. He's been through 20 of these storms, just like the fire service guys have. He knows his routine. He knows how to get his back up. He knows the preparation. So, you know, we would have these meetings, and I'd go, Tom, are we ready? He goes, we're ready. And I never had a doubt that I even had to check on what he had to do.
Yeah, let me tell you what some of the things that these guys did. Our Tommy Tiernan and our highway guys, we have places that flood during storms. They went out before the storm, set up pumps so we can pump certain areas. This is not bay water, this is just storm water. And during the storm, we had guys out pumping water to keep neighborhoods from flooding. And you know, we know that people were told as the rain's coming, the winds are whipping up, go back into shelter. These guys didn't always go back. They kept pumping, and they saved a lot of people from having their homes destroyed because Tom Tiernan and his crews saved
You know,
them.
yesterday we received an email from a resident, and I believe the supervisor had the time to look at it, and it was about how dedicated civil service people in this area are. And you don't always get that attitude, and it's just an amazing thing from going to volunteers to civil service people that are that dedicated.
Well, very dedicated workforce.
Absolutely.
We're about out of time, so I'd like to thank you both for appearing today and sharing your perspectives. And frankly, as a town resident, to thank you for all the preparation you've done, too, and how this really went very, very well. Thank you very much for joining us today, for viewing this show. As I've said, this is going to be the first of a series of shows that will examine various aspects of emergency management and public safety. And we will continue focusing on this because emergency matters.